What's good with the YouTube? You already know, Big Flacco with a convict's perspective, man. And I got another one I'm bringing out the archives from Real Talk with Flacco, man, so I could have it on this platform. And that's about the incident between the Nortenos and Wolfpack at D.V.I, which occurred sometime in 2006. As you guys know, I'm the one that pretty much implemented that green light. There was a lot of circumstances regarding this, man. And, you know, there was a lot of issues at that time in the system that had been occurring between a lot of Norteño and wood cars at that time. And some of these people were taking issues that occurred in different prisons and applying them to other facilities. And this was a big change in the system compared to years before, which was whatever happened on that yard, that, you know, that facility would stay there. This was a very troubling time for a lot of these groups trying to, you know, some of these groups were trying to establish themselves away from the brand and so forth. And the Wolfpack was one of them, where they were trying to establish on these líneas their own little foundation and whatnot, man. You know, the issues that I had several times with white individuals, you know what I mean? One being the one that I sliced from ear to ear way back in the 90s. Another one being another incident that occurred, you know, over there in Solano, you know, where we got rushed by the NLRs and whatnot. It seemed like there was a lot of issues that occurred between Norteños and white factions. And a lot of these kind of were contributed to at that time. We were not letting any NLRs walk our lines or any type of particular group segment that aligned politically with the AB at that time. You know, so there was a lot of things that were kicking off, man. Now, since the end of all hostilities, things have changed. There's a little bit better relationships. All these groups pretty much nowadays are pretty much in, pretty much have aligned with similar beliefs as far as, you know, against the actives, inactives, and whatnot. And as far as pushing to end all hostilities. So they all have a purpose of trying to work together towards common goals and so forth, man. Doesn't mean any of these groups have changed their alliances, but there's a lot more abilities to coexist, which is kind of key to nowadays, man. But I thought this would be a good spill for me to drop real quick, man. You know, I've seen more issues with us and like other white factions because of different circumstances. I've seen dudes that used to be homeboys turn wood. Next thing you know, we remove them. I've seen dudes come through with tattoos that just because they had NLR, whether they were active or not, or this was from the early 80s when they were in YA, they were getting hit regardless. It all stemmed from one thing. You know, we'd rather remove the person than allow the threat to be there. And that's how things used to occur back then, man. There was a lot of guerra and wars going on these líneas. And I think in the early 2000s, right, it was almost everywhere. Everybody had issues with each other. There was no more alliances. There was no more allies. There was none of that existing with a lot of these groups anymore. And so that enabled a lot of people to coexist. And it also gave room for smaller factions to be able to coexist and have some type of establishment on these yards, man. And so hope you guys enjoy this, man. It got okay views on Real Talk. So this may be the first time you guys ever see this video. This is spoke about it before, but you know, the Wolfpack were eventually green-lighted by the AB. Some of them were able to be saved. Some of them, people didn't even want to move on. Like I said, Jeremy Jones was one dude that nobody wanted to move on because he's a beast. But yeah, this was their whole foundation of their focus, man. And we were looking at them as junior ABs in a sense that they were forming a organization or a group or a movement that was contrary to our beliefs at that time. You know, so this was a hard push at that time. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of these green lights on these particular factions started to occur more in the late 90s and early 2000s. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy it. And as you guys already know, man, on this platform, I try to mix it up. I try to go into historical events, address current events, address issues, and so forth. You never know what direction I'm going to go. And so today I'm going to discuss a personal story involving a decision that I had to make at one time when I was the AIC, which stands for Authority in Charge of Dual Vocational Institute, which is Tracy, which is one of the most, how you say it, craziest experiences I ever had as far as holding the authority position. Sometime when I got there shortly, I say within a month, I ended up taking charge of that prison. I noticed I had to restructure a lot of things. Change all the codes, get everybody in line, get everybody established, and so forth. And there was a couple pending issues I had to decide while I was there. which were things just under investigation, requests a couple people to the hole. Certain people were doing, you know, in violation of certain bonds and so forth and under investigation, or certain people or frontline status and just needed to report. In any event, we caught wind of an issue. Apparently, there was a homeboy that was over there in L2 section, which was L2 section, which was overflow at that time of the hole. And some wood that was going out, he was leaving, decided to send a kite to who he thought was actually a white boy, but was really a homeboy. And in this kite, it talked about a preparation plan to move on the homeboys based upon an issue that happened in Solano. Okay, so this was around 2006. So I get the kite, I screen it. And this particular group that was pushing this agenda was called the Wolfpacks, which some of them were skinheads, some of them were just Wolfpacks and so forth. At this time, they were being viewed up in Northern California as a group that was kind of symbolic to how the P9s looked at and NLR looked at down south a little bit. Even though there's NLR up north, but the Wolfpack was a very strong faction in the Butte County, San Joaquin, Sac County area. And they had a couple individuals that were very seasoned. Currently, they've gone against the AB. They formed a four-man alliance with a couple other groups that stand against the Aryan Brotherhood. But at this time, they were looked at as junior ABs. So, in me evaluating this kite, I'd also got word from the Carnal over there in Santa Clara County Jail that we need to push those lines a little bit more. And I, based upon the previous authority that was in charge of that facility, had took some certain actions towards an NF associate that he shouldn't have, and a certain C felt disrespected. It was Dancing Bear. I had to end up getting that Dancing Bear personally and telling him, like, you know, to pump his brakes at that time, and that I was there now. And the individual that was running the facility before I got there ended up coming back, and he wasn't going to group yard, so that speaks volumes. So pretty much I cut him off Gastuvo. But anyways, in reviewing this kite, I elected to give a green light to declare war on all Wolfpack skinheads, and that they were not to walk our yards in D.V.I. Tracy. I submitted these reports to the Bay, to Corcoran, and so forth. Afterwards, everything was acknowledged and stamped by the higher command up there based upon the actions that I took. And in doing so, I was able to protect further bloodshed from occurring over there on the main line. We moved on them before they moved on the homeboys. And so I sent word out there. And at that time, we were using the legal law slips that you get in CDC, which would be pink. And that way you knew it was coming from ASEG. No one could try to, you know, send a faulty kite or try to clear themselves, go out through the main line and cause any type of destruction. So those were a couple of orders. I gave 3 orders at that time. I requested 2 soldados to come back to the hole, which was Little Man from Patterson, as well as Cisco Monster from Susanville. Cisco owed for not honoring bond 13. And Little Man was out there claiming that he was part of the regiment out there in the streets while that area was put on free. So I needed to get him back there and pretty much put him in check. And so they were requested. In the process of this happening, there was a couple priority targets. One of them that actually got transferred that day. He got lucky. But all the other ones we were ended up to execute, they all got hit. I think about 4 or 5 of them ended up getting stabbed. One of them got airlifted out of there. You know, of course, the natural reaction from a lot of the whites was to get off. As soon as they seen that this riot was kicking off, you know, they took action, of course, you know what I mean? So, and the thing is that nobody knew or understood what it was about. I think if other groups may have known, they may have decided to stay out of it. And so this just created a whole effect throughout the prison for months, man. One of the kites got intercepted, I guess, on the way to the Bay, and the IGI and all that were starting to harass me a little bit, talking about, man, what you created here, it's going to take years to fix. But basically, we had to do what we had to do. Now, the funny thing about it, right, is after I made this decision and the fucking alarms went off crazy everywhere, there was a skinhead that was there that had just paroled from Solano. He was a youngster, kind of obnoxious and stuff, right? And see, I had not even told anybody in the oil that I made that decision till after, because I didn't want no breach of security. But this white boy started making comments in the chair. I told you they were coming. Yeah, my homeboys are going to be here pretty soon. He was all pumped up and shit. Next you know, he was fucking sad and unstuck because he found out that it was us that moved on them. So that gave more vindication that, yeah, the Wolfpacks and skinheads were actually going to move on the homeboys. After that, it became there was a lot of things that started to occur at that facility. The guards started to play games. They set up a couple individuals. They set up an old homeboy that was in a wheelchair. Some woods actually rushed up on him and stabbed him. That was one incident. Another incident was reported by an individual named Robert Happy Perez from Hayward, that because of their skin, that they took out about 5 homeboys that looked white and they put them in the cafeteria. And next thing you know, they brought about 30, 40 white boys into the cafeteria. They were acting like they were doing a search, but what they did is they did this to justify them intermingling woods with fucking Nortenos, because they already knew they weren't supposed to. And so it ended up being like about 4 or 5 homeboys, I guess, ended up getting off with about 30, 40 dudes. And I guess a couple homeboys got it pretty bad. So they were playing games. They were popping doors. And the homeboys were prepared for it, man. But, you know, this ended up becoming escalated a little bit further and further. There was more things were kicking off. And the thing was, my next directives were that to continue to remove any wolf packs or NLR that hit the yard or any P9s. But any regular whites or skinheads, as long as they don't pose a threat, to stand down. But be ready. Have those pieces ready to drop. Have those pieces ready to go. If these dudes want to get with it, then be ready to take action. Those were the clear directives, because eventually we're going to have to try to have some type of solution here. But everything was too fresh, so we're not going to start communicating. And there was no one really out there that within the white faction that had any say-so. And so reception's a revolving door. So a lot of times things will, after 3 or 4 months, things will die down. And then you can sit there and say, well, hey, who was here before ain't here no more. Let's get back to business. We all want to have our privileges and incentives. Let's go out to reception side. And that's how it works, man. But at that time, it was cracking off in Tracy. You know, at the same time, it was cracking off in Quinn. So both reception centers were rocking. Both on lockdown, both for riots. And, you know, these are the type of decisions that you have to make. And see, sometimes, like I said, man, it's not so much that you have a dislike for an individual or you hate a particular group or so forth. Sometimes it's the cost of doing business. And see, that's the message in today's spill, is that sometimes you're going to be put in situations that are uncompromising, whether you agree with them or not. Whatever group that you decide to politically align with, you're going to have to defend that, you know, and you know, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, look at this situation. You had a couple dudes that were airlifted out of there based upon the fact that, you know what I'm saying, they were aligned with a particular group that was trying to push an agenda. Other individuals got involved, you know, and you know what I'm saying, that's the cost of doing war. And those are the decisions that sometimes have to be made that nobody understands. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, it's nothing that I take pride in that I had to do, but it's something at the time that I had to do because they were going to move on the homeboys first. And that's just how the way it goes sometimes, man. Everybody's scheming. Everybody is trying to stay one up on the next person. You know what I'm saying? And within how the Nortenos function, a lot of times we could pay attention and see those things because we're reporting all the information that we see. We're taking observation posts of all activities. We're reporting it to, therefore it can be processed. And see, that's how things get processed. You know, I'm the AIC, but I'm getting information reports about the whole damn prison. Therefore, I can process what's going on. Okay, do these white boys sound like they still want it? What are the rumblings? What are the reports? What are their actions? Where do we go from here? You know? So it becomes a difficult situation. Like I said, man, you know, there's some people who take pride in holding leadership positions because they've never had it before. You know, I fortunately have held like numerous leadership positions where I was the overall. And I know one thing is that you never make decisions based upon your ego. You always have to make decisions based on what the law says, and first and foremost, on the security of everybody, first and foremost. And see, that's the bad thing about politics sometimes, is that when you have young-minded individuals, they may have a bad experience over here, like in Solano. The Nortenos and skinheads were getting at it previously. You're not supposed to take that attitude to the next prison. But too often than not, people are going to have underlying factors of why they don't like a particular group because of bad experiences. Therefore, they're going to be quick to push the agenda. The Wolfpacks was a classic example. A couple of those individuals were caught up in the issues in Solano. Therefore, they tried to plan an attack. They had a breach of security. We stayed on top of it. We moved on. And I use the word we because at the time I'm talking about how I was in the moment, you know. And that was a big thing at the time. They ended up having to get rid of me real quick. You know, Pender, and K-Wing, he was on me. All those correction officers were on me hella bad, man. You know, because I guess they had been in such disarray for so long that they noticed that the way that the prison was going at that time, everything was pretty much being structured in accordance to how it was supposed to be set up. I reestablished that facility, just like how Gunner spoke about it. Gunner had just arrived right before I was leaving. And at that time, I was able to leave the facility in an individual named Travieso from Modesto's hands. I knew he was going to be there for a while. I knew he had experience from before. I knew he was set up with Sombras for a while. So I figured in lieu of me leaving, he would be the best to bestow that position because he had enough time to be there. And so, you know, that's how it sometimes goes, man. We discussed about the riot that happened over there in San Quentin. I mean, with the Africanos. I mean, it's the same story wherever you are. You never know what's going to happen. When you go to prison, it's not always something that's personal. Sometimes it's just the cost of doing business. So you never know what position that you may be put in. People die based upon riots. People get shot and killed by the guards. People get stabbed and killed. And these are the things that you really have to consider. You know, you're not going to duck and dodge anything in prison. You're not going to hide in shadows because eventually you're going to be found out. And that occurred in this situation. I'm going to speak on that because that's another call I had to make. There was an individual from Santa Clara who, when the individual Cisco was getting off, right, after they booked these dudes, he got rushed by about 5 or 6 dudes. And he was getting off with 6 dudes. These dudes were about 10 feet away, him and some youngster. And instead of engaging with the enemy, they got down and that homeboy get jumped. Cowardice act, desertion. Inquired about it, boom, I had him whacked. First yard he went to the yard, I had about 3 or 4 people confirm it. Even he tried to sit there and say, oh, I didn't do nothing. Why didn't you do something? Oh, I don't know. Well, you got a K number. You've been in the system 12 years. You should know. You just endangered the brother's life. So it was an easy call to make. You abandoned the household. And see, those are the situations that you need to realize when you go to prison. You're not going to hide in shadows. When it's time to get off or get active, you're going to have to get active. And you're putting yourself in a position to catch more time, catch life, or even have your life took. Those are the realities of it, man. So think about the message that I'm trying to have in this spill. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to glorify or glamorize that, you know, I was able to make this call, but this was a decision that had to be made. And see, there's going to be decisions like that in prison that have to be made. There's going to be conflicts that occur that you have no control over. But because you're deciding to ride with a particular faction, you're going to have to do what you have to do. Anyways, a little bit of story about the Wolfpack situation, man. You know, it was kicking off. I mean, I was getting numerous reports about little skirmishes that they were having. Guards were trying to set up homeboys. They had 2 incidents where the guards set up the homeboys over there, man. Because they were mad. Because the way we strategized that, they got the business pretty bad. They got it. There was only one target we weren't able to get, and that was their leader at that time. Fortunately, that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Anyways, it's your boy Flacco. Real Talk with Flacco. You guys have a good day. I'm out.